Hello and welcome to Ruggles Round Up. It's the portion of our Elevated Mission podcast where we talk about all things sports. We're super excited to bring this episode to you. Well, with the national championship now in his pocket, Harbaugh has finished his honey-to-do list at Michigan. What say you, Ian?
Yeah, I think he's done everything he has been asked to do in Michigan, and did extra. He went out there and scrubbed the underneath of the toilet that no one wants to get into. He went out there, not only went and beat Ohio State, also went and beat Nick Saban in the semifinals to get to the national championship game. I mean, that's the route you want to take to prove yourself, and then went out there and beat Washington to hold up the biggest trophy in college football. He's definitely just put himself in this pedestal of a lot of top tier head coaches, and kind of fun that the first 4-team playoff win went to a Big Ten team, and the last 4-team playoff win goes to a Big Ten team.
Yeah, and it's bookended by Ohio State and Michigan. You know, it makes me think back to the 1970s, the 10-year war between Bo Schembechler and Woody Hayes. And, ended maybe poorly when Woody, punched a player on the sideline. But, that was a great era of Michigan, Ohio State. But the only demon that Jim Harbaugh not able to vanquish this year, and that's Urban Meyer, because Urban Meyer is not in the coaching ranks right now. But that's the one ghost that's going to remain for him, unless somehow he faces Urban Meyer sometime in the future. But yeah, I think you're right. Now the question becomes, does Jim Harbaugh go off to the NFL? Does he end up trying to now his one loss in another championship game to his brother in the Super Bowl at the NFL level? Does he want another shot at that? But he has to give up. Right now in Ann Arbor, he is living – his parents literally live next door to him. Like, it's the town he loves. He just recently is asked, what would you want to have said at your funeral? And he said, I just want it to be said that I was a Michigan man at my funeral. So, to leave all that, he truly loves Michigan. He's there with his parents. What's the right opportunity in the NFL that actually draws him away from that?
I mean, there's two winning routes that we've seen work in coaching, where we've seen Pete Carroll, where he went to the NFL, had his stint, and then came back to college game, had success, and then went back and has been very successful with Seattle. And then you got the Nick Saban, which he went to the NFL, failed in the NFL, came back to college game, and became a college legend. Which route does Harbaugh choose to do, as he has both options available for him right now, as Michigan's set up to be a dominant force for the next few years? The Big Ten is only getting harder with more players joining in. So can Michigan stay at the top, even though they're a great recruiting destination, being one of the top teams for historically in college football? And so I think it's going to be an interesting situation for Harbaugh as Big Ten gets more competitive. Does he want to go and move on to a different team? And I think also you then come into question of what his options are in those different teams. I think a lot of talk for the Chargers. I think there's been people maybe throwing out the Commanders out there as well. A few different stops for him. I think it's an interesting place for him to be at, because I would personally stay at Michigan, because Michigan is that staple in college football. There's not much better coaching outside of the NFL than coaching at Michigan. And so I would stay at Michigan, become a college football legend. But I think Harbaugh's sick of the NCAA.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he wants the challenge of the NFL. I think he wants to get away from the NCAA overlords that are sitting there it feels like trying to pick a fight with them, trying to just kind of be nasty with them. But we'll see. It is an interesting thing, because you look at, like you said, the way Pete Carroll's done it, the way it happened for Nick Saban. We saw Jimmy Johnson. We've seen a few of these coaches, go to the NFL and have success after success at the college game. Of course, Jim's already been there, right? He had success at the college game, not to this extent, but then he went off to the NFL, and it looked like he was even going to have more success in the NFL than he did at the college. But that kind of wore thin with the executives of the 49ers. So then back to his alma mater, to Michigan, and then that looked like that wasn't going well. And so we talk about two eras in Michigan in the Jim Harbaugh era, and that is pre-COVID and post-COVID. So up to pre-COVID, he was winning a lot of games, but he couldn't get over the hump, couldn't beat Urban Meyer, couldn't, take care of business on the big stage. And then COVID hit, and it was an absolute disaster. I think they went 2-4 that season, and then it looked like they were going to run him out of town. Michigan asked him to take a pay cut. He does. He stays. And then we see post-COVID Harbaugh, and that's 3 trips to the playoffs and now a championship, feather in his cap. And how did he get that done? He went to his brother in the NFL and said, I need help on the defensive side of the ball. And even though they had a great defense already, the defense just wasn't good to match up with those great teams. And then he brings in Raven assistants to make that happen, and they get the job done. And I think that was the thing. They built it to beat Ohio State, but that was the perfect way to beat Washington as well. But that non-perfect matchup against Alabama proved that they really were, the best team in the country. Because here's the deal. A lot of folks will say Georgia would have beat Michigan, but all I got to say is, Georgia, you got to beat Alabama so that you're in the playoffs, then to face Michigan. It was like 2 weeks of – it was like – okay, that was a play-in game, really is the way that worked out. So Georgia and Alabama faced. Alabama got in, then Alabama lost to Michigan. Granted, I think Georgia probably beats Alabama most weeks. So, Alabama would give Michigan a game, but Michigan got it done on the field. They're 15-0, and Harbaugh's a national championship coach.
Yeah, no matter what, I think you got to give Harbaugh his flowers, as he has been a great coach for Michigan. He started off with just putting out some really good teams that played really good football. It feels like finally he got that quarterback in a quarterback-driven football that we are in right now, where you need that star guy to take you over the hump. He finally got that guy, and he proved that once he had that guy, he could win national championships. And so he proved everything he needed to at Michigan. Does he move on to the next level? I think he has a bunch of doors open for him, but it's still going to be tough to pry him away from that legacy that he has at Michigan.
He's the number one prospect as a coach for a bunch of these NFL teams. Here's the interesting thing to me. Does he want a proven good quarterback like in San Diego with Justin Herbert? He's got the goods. He can go out there and play. I think he'd play really well in a Harbaugh system. He's got those legs. He can run a little bit. He's got the arm. He can take care of business. Arguably the best quarterback ever, other maybe Andrew Luck, in that Harbaugh system, okay? But does he want to mold his own guy? Does he want to create it from scratch? Does he want to go to Washington and be close to his brother, right? He could be in that D.C. area and be close to Baltimore. He likes to be near family, and actually create it from scratch for himself, that, this is my guy. This is the guy I created, and I built him, and no one was expecting me to do this.
I mean, you saw him try and do that with Colin Kaepernick when he first got him and started developing him. He played him a lot and had him start over the very efficient Alex Smith at the time. And so it wouldn't be surprising if he took over a team that even had a pretty decent starter at it. Let's say he goes to the Titans and you got Ryan Tannehill there. I wouldn't be surprised if, we're seeing a lot of that Will Levis action, or, Will Levis is, questionable player at that point in that Jim Harbaugh system, as he, goes and looks for something else. I think there's a lot of options, especially whatever team does get Harbaugh, just because he's one of those guys that has a very unique way of looking at the game. And so he's going to reshape whatever team he goes on to fit his style.
Yeah, well, as you talk about the Titans, we'll talk in another podcast about Mike Vrabel being let go, but Vrabel, I feel like, is kind of a more modern version, maybe, or a younger guy version of Harbaugh. So I almost don't like him in the Titans, because if they're going away from Vrabel, why bring in a similar, style coach? They're both tough guys, kind of coach the same way, in my opinion, a little bit at least. Different personalities, but there's some similarities there. I like to see Harbaugh going to a place where maybe he's different than the last head coach. Like, he looks a little different from that aspect. and then the Titans to go after somebody that maybe looks a little different from Vrabel. I think as soon as Harbaugh finds his spot, if he does go to the NFL, I think then immediately Vrabel's going to find his spot, because I think Vrabel's a hot commodity as a coach, because he can get it done. Super smart guy, and can bring a toughness and edge. If your team needs that and you don't have that right now, I like bringing Vrabel in and getting that tough edge to your team.
Oh, yeah. I think both those guys, Harbaugh and Vrabel, both bring in that hard-nosed mentality into your roster. I think my last little bit on Harbaugh would be my perfect situation for Harbaugh, as he goes and signs over to Atlanta. What has Harbaugh done a great job with? Run games and tight ends are two things that Michigan has always had stars of.
Right.
What does Atlanta have? Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. Then
So
you say
underused.
they have the number 8 overall pick, so they don't necessarily have their pick at the top quarterbacks. But I say maybe you can talk that Bears team into maybe dropping down into the 8th overall pick, give them your second round pick, and maybe next year's first rounder, and you move on up, get Caleb Williams to build around all that offensive talent, draft a hard-nosed, a really good coach in John Harbaugh to lead that young crew. Wouldn't be a bad solution for Atlanta's woes.
Yeah, no, I don't mind that pick right there. That seems like maybe a good fit as well. Like you say, that young talent that's been at Atlanta just been totally underutilized. I mean, at least what it appears, looking at it from the outside, not there day to day in the building at the practices, but a lot of good talent that just, I'm not even saying that they weren't, playing them. They were out on the field. They just weren't utilizing them really. And it was kind of a strange mix, that offense with those players and the way that all went down. But another talk for maybe another podcast. But Harbaugh, it's going to be interesting to watch where he goes from here. But kudos to him. National championship in the feather in the cap. Let's see if he goes off to the NFL to get to that Super Bowl championship, or does he want to keep on trying to get that national championship at the college level again? Well, thank you for watching and listening to Ruggles Round Up on the Elevated Mission podcast. Make sure if you're on YouTube, you click the subscribe and you click the like button. We love that you're out there listening and watching us talk about all things sports. We'll see you next time.